the profession is changing. The work habits are changing, and the burnout level is getting higher and higher.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people like you introducing some of the older generation and people like Dr. Larimore, and I know you interviewed Dr. Ardente. I think all of that, and sharing these different aspects of our profession with these younger people, so that if they do get burned out doing something, they can take that Y in the road like I did, So I'm not a horse vet anymore. I did something else, but I still love what I do. And I think you're getting the word out there to help them understand that it's a great profession and so many options available for you.
Welcome to the Vet Life Reimagined podcast, where curiosity and community are what we are all about in building a thriving career and life in vet med. I'm Dr. Megan Sprinkle, and today I have Dr. Doug Mader. Dr. Mader is triple board certified, and as a part of his exciting career journey, he has appeared on Animal Planet, National Geographic, Discovery, and more, caring for the pets of celebrities to school children. He loves to write and has written textbooks, articles, and scientific publications. Recently, he has published a memoir of one of his early years in clinical practice in the inner city of Los Angeles during the LA riots. He is a wonderful storyteller, and I believe fellow veterinary professionals will identify with his stories. I think Dr. Mader is even more wonderful live in our conversation. He is passionate about teaching and the human-animal bond. So you will learn about his early career journey, his wisdom of the human-animal bond, and his why for writing his book, The Vet at Noah's Ark: Stories of Survival from an Inner City Animal Hospital. And because I'm confident you will enjoy Dr. Mader, I will go ahead and say that he will be at the VMX Conference 2023 in Orlando for a book signing, and I will be there too. So please reach out and find us in Orlando. Now let's get to our conversation with Dr. Mader. How did you get into veterinary medicine? And your story is really interesting. So tell everybody what got you interested in veterinary medicine at the beginning.
Well, Megan, first off, thank you so much for the invitation. It's fun to be here. I know I'm following some big shoes, so hope I can meet your expectations. But certainly, I'm happy to discuss that with you. It's a profession that I'm really pleased to have entered. Life is funny how it throws us a lot of curveballs, and you have all of these intersections where you can turn right or turn left. When I was real young, there was a TV show, a medical show, and I wanted to be a doctor because I always thought it was cool, I want to be a doctor because I think I'm smart enough to do that. And then as I got a little bit older, I had an older sister who had horses. And one day she invited me to go out and do something to help her with her horse. And I didn't really want to go because I thought it was stupid. So I went out, and so I'm in high school, young male in high school, right? And all of a sudden I go to the stable and I'm noticing, wow, there's really a lot of cute girls here with these horses. There's something about cowboy hats and cowboy boots. Then I noticed that all the young girls were like drooling over the blacksmith when he would come out and put shoes on their horse. So I'm going, you know what? I can do that. So at 15, I took all the money that I'd saved up for my odd jobs, and I moved away, and I went to Farriers College and got my blacksmithing certificate. And then I moved back home, and I started my own blacksmithing business. And as expected, all the girls thought I was pretty cool because I could shoe their horse. And that was fun. But what really got fun was I started working with the local equine veterinarian. And he would come out and he would have these horses that were lame. And he would ask me to work with him, and I would make custom shoes, and then I would fit the shoes to the horse. And then we would take these horses that were pretty much on the way to the glue factory, and we could make them walk and become sound riding horses and comfortable and not be in pain. And I'm thinking, this is really cool. And then I go, I don't need to be a blacksmith the rest of my life and break my back when I'm, still in my teenager years. I want to go to vet school. So that's how I made the transitions from medical school through blacksmithing through veterinary school. So I had every intention of being an equine veterinarian. And back in the early 70s, I learned how to fly through the Air Force. And so I had envisioned myself kind of like the American version of the James Herriot. I'm sure you're familiar with his All Creatures Great and Small series in England. And so what I had planned on doing was I had my pilot's license. I was going to get a plane and I was going to fly from ranch to ranch to ranch and take care of horses. And I thought that would be the ideal job. Well, again, life throws you curveballs. When I was in graduate school, a young, underage, drunken driver was drag racing with his friend and lost control and ran me over. Mm-hmm. So 11 surgeries and a year later, I just didn't have the strength and confidence to work with horses anymore. I mean, horses are really smart. And that's one thing I learned. And I always felt very comfortable around horses, that I understood their behavior, and they know when something's not right. And it just never clicked for me after all my injuries. I mean, if you ever meet me, you can look at, I'm covered with scars. I talk about it in the book. I probably have about 3 feet of scars from all the surgeries I've had, but I'm not complaining because I'm here. Anyway, so it was funny because when I was starting veterinary school, right out of graduate school, I went through all of this hospitalization and multiple surgeries, and I just got really fidgety and bored. So I started volunteering at the zoo ward. And I've always had a passion for exotic animals because I was born in the upper Florida Keys, and our house was right on a swamp. My older brother used to take me out. We would, collect frogs and snakes, and he'd show me all the birds and teach me all about nature. So even though I loved working with the horses, I've always had this inner hidden passion for exotic animals. So when I was recovering from my surgery and on my convalescence, I started volunteering at the zoo ward, and I'm looking at, I'd go to the zoo with the zoo doctors and the residents and the students, and I'd go, every time they interact with one of these animals, they've got help, and B, if it's something big, they sedate it or anesthetize it. So you know what? I can do this. So I said, okay, time to switch. So I literally switched tracks from an equine veterinarian to small animal exotics. But I'd always told myself 2 things growing up. Number 1, I would never work on small animals. And number 2, I would never live in a big city. And guess what the book is all about? Moving to a big city and buying a small animal hospital. Yeah. So again, you just have to kind of go with the flow and make things happen. So that's really how it got started.
Yeah, that's a lot and in kind of a short time span, really, if you think about it. I want to go back just a little bit. As veterinary professionals, we're really passionate about what we do. And something that sudden and big, like a car accident where you really had to do a 180 with what you thought you were going to do and what you thought could be kind of like your identity as this amazing equine veterinarian flying from ranch to ranch. So what was that process like? How were you able to kind of figure out your purpose, your identity in kind of the sudden traumatic way to be able to pivot into something that is also amazing? And you have lots of stories from it as well. But what was that process like?
It was kind of forced on me by curriculum because, here I had this in my DNA. I wanted to be an equine veterinarian. I mean, God, I used to ride the rodeo circuit. I used to show horses, train horses, and I really love, and I still love horses, but I knew that I couldn't do it. I just didn't have the physical strength to do it anymore. So then I switched to small animal exotic track, and I tried to, I'd get out the course schedule every year, and I would say, okay, I want to take my horse classes, and I want to take a class on cage birds. Well, wait a minute. They're exactly at the same time. And so, okay, realistically, I know I'll never do horses again. I'll do the birds, or I'll do canine ophthalmology. So it was kind of forced on me. I had to make the switch. Mm-hmm. Here I am almost 4 decades later. I still have 5 horse clients, and they belong to a small zoo. And those are the only horses that I'll take care of anymore. In the islands, I live on an island chain, 43 islands connected by 42 bridges. And believe it or not, there's probably about 24 horses up and down the Keys. And I won't take any private clients. I don't have the confidence and in all fairness, I don't have the training with the horses anymore. I really kind of left that a long time ago. So I've got 5 horses and mostly mini horses that I take care of at a small zoo. And I could do wellness stuff, anything serious. I get on the phone and network with my buddies that are equine specialists, and they walk me through anything major. But I just don't do the horses anymore. And it was difficult, because that was something I really, really wanted to do. But you know what? I developed a new passion, and I don't regret it. I'm glad I did make that change. I probably wouldn't be here talking to you today if I was still doing horses, or if it was, we have a totally different conversation.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to look at it as well. It was just a new adventure that you decided, or you were able to go down. So working with the exotics, the book especially is you buying the small animal practice, but you became known as the place to go for exotic pets. And so you've worked on all sorts of animals. So what was kind of that transition to, okay, I'm going to be exotic veterinarian now, onto kind of buying your practice and growing from there?
Yeah, it was really interesting, because I'm going to step back just a bit if I could. When I was in veterinary school, I had multiple jobs, and one of my weekend jobs was I worked at the primate center at UC Davis. And this is back in a time when the AIDS HIV virus was first discovered. Mm-hmm. And so the research team that I worked on discovered simian AIDS, which is the monkey version of human AIDS. And it was very important because they were co-discovered at almost the same time. And they were able to use the simian AIDS model to help study and learn more about the human AIDS problem. So I had kind of an interesting transition there. So I had my small animal / exotics training in vet school. And then I was invited to do a residency at the primate center without having to do an internship, which is kind of unusual, because usually you have to do an internship first. But because I'd already worked there, I was on the team. The people that were on the simian research team knew me and felt that I was worth bringing back. So they brought me back for a residency program. So that program actually was predominantly primates with zoo animals. When I finished the program, I got hired on at the university as an assistant university veterinarian because of all my primate background. But I tell you, 8 to 5 jobs don't work with me. I'm a workaholic, and I'm a workaholic because I absolutely love what I do. And what's the old saying? If you like what you do, you're never actually working. So I worked at the university for, 8 or 9 months, and it paid really well. No emergencies, but it just wasn't for me. I need hands-on. I needed diagnostics. In the academic world, or in university veterinarian, is mostly administrative stuff. Mm-hmm. So I had a very good friend who was a veterinarian in Southern California, and we decided we'd buy our own practice. So we started looking around, and we both liked the ocean. So we wanted to be in Southern California near the ocean. And that's how we ended up in Southern LA. But to get back to your point, I like to teach. I've always liked teaching. I've always liked writing. And if you're going to teach, you've got to know it. It's not fair to your students and the people that you're tutoring to teach them mediocre. You have to teach them current state-of-the-art stuff. And what I found is keep in mind, this is almost 40 years ago, there weren't a lot of exotic animal veterinarians or exotic animal programs in the United States. Maybe two colleges really taught it. And I would go and I'd give lectures, and all the boarded dog and cat people, bless their hearts, would kind of look down on me like, "Oh, you're just an exotics person. You're not boarded. What do you know?" So that was when I decided, okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to get boarded in dog and cat practice. So that's essentially where the book starts. It starts with me applying to get credentialed to be accepted to take the test, and then studying for the test, and then ultimately taking the test a year later. And that's when the book ends, is when the readers find out whether or not I passed. So I did that because I wanted the credentials so that when I taught anything, whether it was dogs and cats or exotics, I had the credentials of being a boarded specialist. So that's kind of how all that came about.
Interesting. And actually, while you were talking, I remembered a part of the book that you talk about is your wife, and how she was an human emergency nurse as well. And you're kind of like opposite shifts and everything. So where did you meet her?
She wanted to go to vet school initially, and I was a senior student. No, I think I was a junior student in veterinary school, and she was pre-vet, so she was a few years younger than I was, and she was volunteering at the zoo ward, and that's basically how we met. And then she decided she didn't want to go into vet school because she saw how hard I worked, and decided to become an emergency room nurse. And she worked just as hard,
I was
but
going to
just
say.
in a different area. I mean, she'd be, her typical was 12-hour night shifts, and she loved that adrenaline rush of working in the emergency room at the trauma centers. So, but the thing is, we literally had polar opposite schedules. And if on a good day, we might wave to each other as I was going to work and she was coming home.
Oh, goodness. Well, that's interesting. So you both are extremely hard workers. You both like a lot of excitement. So I'm curious, did that go well?
You'll learn more about that in the sequel.
Oh, okay. All
Put
right.
it this way, my new wife is a veterinarian.
Oh, okay. At least you can have a little bit more similar conversation.
Yeah.
Talk about poop a little bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah, people don't like listening to us talk at dinner times. Like, how can you talk about that? About what?
This is normal. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, this is normal.
Only in veterinary medicine. Love it. Well, so you're in the process of getting boarded. We'll let people be surprised by the end of the book. But I mean, just kind of being able to see the list of things that you've accomplished and done. That, like, what is the bridge? You're working and getting boarded. You're having all these exciting different animals come in. I love in the book you talk about some of the ironic parts of veterinary medicine as well, with the rats. Again, read the book. You'll find out. That was my favorite story so far. But so what's the bridge? You're kind of in a unique location as well, in time of in history. So where does the bridge come from? The practice to being on TV shows and all of these other things.
Well, it was really interesting because, like I said, I enjoyed teaching, and my partner in the business had his MBA, and he was a very solid veterinarian, very good veterinarian. But his main focus was he really loved the business side of veterinary medicine. And my main focus was the medical side. So we were really a good yin and yang, partnership. And I focused on, my goal was to offer academic level medicine in a private setting. And his goal was to run a very efficient hospital. And it was interesting and challenging because the hospital was right on the cusp of the good and the bad part of the city. Or I could say the poor and the affluent part of the city. For instance, one of my clients was the governor of California. He and his wife used to bring their cat in. I had other clients that were so poor they could barely afford shoes for their children. So it was really interesting. A lot of my clients couldn't speak English. That particular area was a melting pot for multiple cultures, and frequently we had language issues because they may be from Asia or some other country where we had a hard time talking with them. So it was a real interesting mix of client base. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
It's starting to. It's just getting more questions in my head, but that's me. Fine. I'll ask for. But working with so many different clients. In fact, I can even go back to that rat story that I mentioned. What I took away from this story, and it's this little schoolgirl, and she has a pet rat, and she loves this pet rat, and I'm just picturing it all raggedy at this point. And you're doing a surgical procedure on the ear, and you talk about how much the anesthesia costs and all of these things cost, and then you have your girl working in the kennel who needs to feed the snakes and says, "Oh, I need $10 to go get some mice to feed the snake." And what I'm taking from that story is that a lot of the value is what we put on things, right? So that little girl had so much value in her pet rat. And interesting enough, you have the governor, you have poor people who are barely shoeing their children. They also really all love their pets, and they're putting probably a lot of value on their pets. How do you have conversations with such diverse backgrounds of pet owners who all really care about their pets? How do you, as a veterinarian and as the role of guiding and leading these clients to help make the right decisions for their pets, how do you approach that? Because
I
that's
think you just nailed the epicenter of what we do. I mean, as veterinarians, veterinary assistants, veterinary technicians, veterinary receptionists, I mean, the epicenter of what we do is the human animal bond. And it doesn't matter what nationality you are, your ethnicity, your culture, your religious beliefs, anything, right? I mean, everybody has a bond, that emotional attachment to their pets. And so when I try and engage people, I always engage it from the perspective of respecting that human animal bond and doing whatever I can do to make sure that I can prolong that human animal bond for them. And sadly, as you know, in some cases, what we do is we end that human animal bond in certain situations. For instance, animals that have terminal cancer. And that's still fulfilling our role as veterinarians and easing pain and suffering. But then you have to be there for them. And I'm sure you're familiar with the 5 Stages of Grief by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And it means following up on that. And if you can't personally hold their hand, you can direct them to somebody who can. But I think the key is to answer your question, your broad question about all the different people that we interacted with, or I interact with, is to focus on one fact and that is they love their pet, and I love my pets. I know my mom loved her pets, and I want to treat them as if I would treat my own mom or I would treat my own pets and give them 100% of my attention and my respect, no matter where they're from or how much money they have. And I can proudly say in my entire career, I've never turned anybody away. If they didn't have any money, I did everything I could to help them. I wouldn't necessarily run out there and sell my car to pay for their pet, but I would certainly help them fund it and make payment plans, get donations. I never chased somebody away because of money. I always tried everything I could to do to help them. And yes, I got burned quite a few times. And yes, my partner, who was the business side of the business, he didn't like it always. But you know what? I still look in the mirror and happy with what I do. I just think it's important that we do that. And sometimes we have to take one for the team.
Hey, thank you for watching Vet Life Reimagined. This is still a growing channel on YouTube, so liking the video, subscribing to the channel, leaving comments, and sharing the show all go a long way right now, and it is all seen and appreciated. I still have over 40 guests and many more videos on the channel that you can go back and listen to, like Justine Lee, i.e. Vet Girl, Dr. Brent Mayab, Alyssa Mages, Rob Trimble, Megan Parks, and many more. I've created playlists for you so you can dive in. You can listen to veterinary technicians, veterinarians, veterinary students. You could discover all of that and more if you go to the main page of the Vet Life Reimagined YouTube channel. The link is down below if you need it. Now back to the conversation. With you loving mentoring others and teaching, we do have an awesome profession, and we get to do lots of really cool things, work with interesting people, all across the board. But it's also a really hard job. There's a lot of emotions involved because we are so passionate about what we do. What is some of the biggest advice that you give to either younger professionals or those interested in getting into the profession about how to deal with that?
That's a good topic for a 3-hour lecture. But in a nutshell, what I like to talk to my young students and my young doctors about is I tell them flat out, I said, you know what? You're going to have a really bad day one of these days. I said, it's going to happen. It's not when or not if, it's when it's going to happen. But you have to remember that a bad day is just that. It's a bad day. It's not you. It's not your career. It's not your life. It's a bad day. It's going to happen. Let it go. But I use the analogy of driving your car and getting a flat tire. Okay. You carry your spare because if you get a flat tire, you want to be able to change it. Ideally, you should practice changing that spare tire in a dry parking lot without a lot of traffic in the daytime so you can learn how to change the tire. Then the night comes and you're driving home in a rainstorm and you get a flat tire, you don't have to panic because you know how to handle it. As a veterinarian, you're going to get a flat tire. You're going to have bad days, okay? Make sure you have that spare tire in the trunk. And what I mean by that is establish your network of friends, establish your support group, find and identify where is your happy place, okay? So that when you have that bad day, which you will have, okay, you can reach out to your friends because you know what? If they're truly friends and they're in part of your support group, they may need to lean on you at some point. And you hold each other up, okay? You find that happy place. My happy place are my pets. You know, I come home, I can have the shittiest day in the world, and you're going to find me talking to my frog, okay? He never judges me. He never says, well, you should have done it this way. You know, he just kind of listens, and it really helps to be able to talk. I'll walk my dogs on the beach. I mean, you know, there's things that you can do that you can control. You can either be the victim or you can be the person in charge, right? So you're going to have bad days. What's the saying? It's like 98% of your clients are great, but 2% of your clients give you 98% of your headaches. You have to learn how to let it roll off your back, because when that 2%er leaves and then one of the 98%ers comes in and they're happy to see you, you owe it to them to have your happy face on. They're not coming to see the grumpy Dr. Mater. They're coming to see the Doug Mater who's going to help their pet and prolong that human-animal bond. So unfortunately, you do have to learn how to put on game faces, and you do have to switch things around a little bit. But I think if you are aware of the reality of the fact that things will go wrong, and sometimes they can go really wrong, but you will always get through it, okay? And you have that support structure in advance. Don't wait for the flat tire and then try and find a tire shop that's open at midnight. Have it with you and be ready and know where it is. So that if you need to reach for it, boom, you pull it out of the trunk, you're ready to go, and you can keep on rolling. And it's the same thing in life. You know, you're going to get knocked down. You're going to get run over by drunken drivers, and you can pick yourself back up. It may take a while. You may have a few scars, but scars make you stronger, you know? So I've been doing this for almost four decades now. And I had the opportunity to go to medical school after I was a veterinarian, because when I was at the Primate Center, I was on a research project studying cystic fibrosis. And the MD that I was working with was one of these incredibly brilliant people. And he got offered a job at another university, and it was a multi-million-dollar deal where he had to take his entire research department with him to this other university. And he wanted to take me to be part of his cystic fibrosis team and steal me away from the HIV studies. And he came to me and he says, I got really good news for you. He goes, you'll be starting as a sophomore medical student in September in Pittsburgh. And I go, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, I'm moving my whole program to Pittsburgh. And he goes, part of the deal was they accept you into medical school and start you off as a sophomore. Since you're already a veterinarian, you don't need to take all those basic classes again. I go, I don't want to go to med school. He goes, what? You want to be a vet the rest of your life? And I said, yeah. And he goes, come on, you go to med school. He goes, you'll be making 4 or 5 times what you're making. I go, I'm not in this for the money. I'm in this because I love what I do. And he goes, let me know Monday. I have to tell him Monday. So he called me every 5 minutes between Friday and Monday. And I said, listen, I can't do this. I said, I'm a veterinarian and I'm always going to be a veterinarian and I'm going to do it all over again. So yeah, I wouldn't change a thing.
I love that analogy. Everything from the spare tire to really understanding that this is really a special profession, that I think what builds our community within the profession so strongly too is we know how special it is, and not everybody understands it unless you're in it either. I think it attracts some very special people, and we do have to stick together. We do have to be willing to be other people's spare tires, but also make sure that we're building our own as well. So love that.
I don't mean to interrupt, but you just said something I think is so true and so important. And that is, I think veterinarians in general are really wonderful people. They've got to be to do what we do. They're loving, caring, compassionate people. And you get that flat tire and you pull over the side of the road in any town, USA, and then you go open up your trunk and your spare is flat. I guarantee you, if you pick up a phone book, well, nowadays you pick up your smartphone and you call a local veterinarian and say, hey, I'm a veterinarian. I broke down in town. Can you tell me who I can call? They're going to probably come out and help you. Veterinarians are great people. They really are.
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely love that too. And like when we come to conferences, it's like we've known each other forever, right? It's like,
No, that's so true. I see people sometimes once a year at certain conferences that I haven't seen in a year, and you pick up the conversation like it was yesterday.
yep. Yep. And oh my goodness, and vet students too. If you tell a group of veterinarians you're a vet student, we're like, we're so excited. We really like helping the next generation as well. And I know you do as well. So thank you for being such a great teacher and a mentor. And you said you've had a lot of people that have supported you and you like to serve it forward, as you say. So I think that's also really special about this profession is that we do that. Yeah. Another thing, just kind of to keep building on some of what we've talked about, is how to find fulfillment when your job is never over. And I think that it can be kind of fun too, that your job is never over.
Yeah.
There's always going to be an animal that needs us. So for you, what drives you? What's the true fulfillment for you?
Seeing that I've made a difference in the human animal bond. If I can, I'm going to elaborate that a little bit too, because when we talk about the human animal bond, the typical definition that most of us think of is the little girl with her kitten, or the older woman in her canary, in the cage that sings to her. But the human animal bond can be a bunch of birders out walking through the forest and looking at the cardinal. They may not know that cardinal. They may never see that cardinal again, but they're all focused on that cardinal. And what gives me fulfillment is knowing that I can make a difference. I was in private practice for 35 years, and now that I'm semi-retired, I sold my practice. I'm just doing wildlife work, volunteer wildlife work, and then I have a couple small zoos and tourist attractions that I take care of. And knowing that I can make a difference in keeping these animals alive and keeping people happy, that's my fulfillment. And somebody asked me once, how many animals have you treated in your career? I don't know, tens of thousands. Then,
who counts?
Yeah, who counts? What are your favorite cases? And I don't remember all my favorite cases. The cases that I remember are the ones that I lost. The cases that went south, no matter how hard I tried or no matter how hard the owners tried. And we all want to walk on water, but sometimes we miss the stones and we fall in. And those are the ones that you lose sleep over, and those are the ones that I will never forget. And you beat yourself up like, what could I have done differently? So, but the fulfillment is that other 98%. I mean, I think about, okay, so I lost this case. It had cancer. We treated it. We put it through chemo. We did surgery. We did radiation, whatever the case may be. Again, we can't always walk on water. We can't save them all. But maybe that next case, and you know what? It could be 4 feet later. I walk out of this exam room. I walk 4 feet. The receptionist hands me a chart. 4 feet later, this far away, I walk into a room and there's a young couple with a new puppy starting a whole new life, maybe for the next 12, 14, 16 years, or as long as you can possibly do it. And knowing that I can be part of that, that's my fulfillment, is making that human animal bond strong and keeping them, teaching the people, working with the pet. That's what makes me go. That's why I get up in the morning.
Yeah. And I like how you made that even bigger. Like you said, we kind of first think of the cat or the dog with the family, but there's something special about animals in general, where even when we go out in nature and just see the animals in nature, there's a bond there, I think, as well. So thank you.
Well, if you think about it, like zoos, you go to a zoo and I don't know, a rhinoceros, okay, an elephant, a giraffe, you pick the animal that you like, and you will probably never in your life get to go in that cage and pet that lion. But as a kid growing up, once a year, your class went to the zoo and took a field trip, and you watch that lion, and the lion gets married and then has cubs, and you develop a bond with that lion. And then sadly, as a lot of animals do, they have a use by date, and then maybe that lion passes away when you're taking your kids to the zoo 20 years later, and a piece of your heart goes with it. You never actually got to know the lion, but you watched it grow up. So there's that human animal bond there. And so the human animal bond, I think, is much bigger than just the little boy walking his puppy in the park. And I have been extremely blessed in my career that I have been able to participate in multiple aspects of the human animal bond. I'm boarded in dogs and cats, so I can work with people and their pets. I'm boarded in zoo animal medicine, so I get to work with some really amazing animals that belong to facilities where, yeah, you know what? Somebody may never touch that alligator, but they sure love coming out and watching it. And I'm also boarded in reptiles and amphibians, and so I do a lot of sea turtle work, and these are endangered species. So if I can save one turtle, and that turtle can lay eggs for the next 40 or 50 years and keep a species going so that your grandkids and my grandkids can enjoy them, I've left a legacy. I've done something good. So it's, again, like I said, you ask me what fulfills me, that's what fulfills me. Is knowing that I can do something long after I'm gone that enhances the quality of somebody else's life or an animal's life. That's really crucial to me.
Oh, yes. I understand that. And speaking of legacy, your book. So I listened to tons of podcasts of people with all sorts of backgrounds, from celebrities to people with lots of letters behind their names. And a lot of them have written books. And all of them have said how challenging writing a book and going through the whole process is. And so I want to acknowledge that you have done something really challenging in writing a book, just in general, period.
Thank you.
But why? What is your why? Why take on that challenge?
This goes back to, I'm assuming you may have read or at least seen some of the PBS series of All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot. He was a veterinarian in England in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And then when he retired, he penned a series of books, All Creatures Great and Small, and there were 3 sequels to it. And they've subsequently gone on to be made into 2 separate PBS series, and PBS just redid it. And it's the human animal bond. And what's really interesting is that he had the same issues with clients and compliance and pets 60, 70 years ago that we have now. Exactly the same. The difference was that he did his in the rolling hills of Yorkshire, England. I did mine in the concrete jungle of Los Angeles. Why did I write the book? Because when I was in high school and I was googly eyes over all the pretty girls riding the horses, and I was an avid reader, somebody gave me the Harriet book and goes, you'd really like this because, he's a veterinarian in England and he works a lot with horses. He goes, I think you'd really like this. So I read his first book and I was hooked. Then I read the second book and I couldn't wait for the third one and a fourth one. And then there were 2 things. One was, you know what? I want to be a veterinarian like him someday with my airplane and my horses. And then number 2, I want to tell stories like he did. Because if you've read his books, the guy is a phenomenal writer. I mean, he is an absolute wordsmith. He's just amazing. And I said, I would love to be able to share stories like that someday when I get old. And I've always liked writing, written, 3 textbooks, countless chapters, countless refereed articles, over 2,000 newspaper articles and magazine articles over my years. And I was told once in high school that if you want to be a writer, you should write at least 1 page a day. And so I've always kept a journal. And so the book, Vet at Noah's Ark, is a true story. It's technically a memoir. That's how the literary critics classify it. But realistically, it's called narrative nonfiction. So it's a story told in the first person. So it's not really about me. It's about veterinary medicine and human animal bond in the inner city. But I always wanted to do that. And was it difficult to write? Not really, because I had kept a journal, so I had all the dates and facts and names. I love to write, so it was easy for me to write. But it took over 5 years because I started it, and then about 8, 9 months into it, our island chain got hit by Hurricane Irma, which was a Category 5 storm, and destroyed everything, and literally took my house and everything I owned away. The only thing that was left was my hospital. We had just built a new hospital that was built for a Category 5. So all of our belongings, except our pets, we evacuated with our pets. Everything we owned was taken away. So for the next 3 years was rebuilding. taking care of my staff, taking care of the people on the island, because they lost everything too, and their pets are still getting sick. Pets don't stop getting sick when there's a natural disaster or terrorism or something else going on. And when you live on a small island, you can't say, you lost your house, you don't have any money, you don't have a job. I'm not fixing Fido. Forget it. You still got to fix Fido. And you just suck it up and be part of the community. And you do it because that's what we do. So to answer your question, I started writing the book. It went really well. This little thing called Hurricane Irma came along. I took about a 3-year hiatus from writing. And then I got to the point where we still didn't have a house. It took me almost 5 years to get a house back after I had to fight all the insurance companies and everything. But I needed that happy place. And writing is one of my happy places. So I would go to work. I'd work at work doing my work, my vet stuff. I would work in the community with, Habitat for Humanity and all the housing people trying to build the community up. And then at night I would go home and then I would sit down and I'd write for a couple, 3 hours. And so the actual writing time, maybe a year and a half, interrupted by a hurricane in the middle.
Yes. And I mean, with your book takes place over about a year, I think is what you were saying. So I think that might narrow it down a little bit, but I'm always curious, just again, me having lots of questions naturally in my mind. How do you pick what stories to put in the book?
That's a good one. Like I said, I kept a journal, and what I did was, it was easy because the book occurs over a specific time frame. And it happened to coincide with the year of the Rodney King riots, which was the social unrest that surrounded the horrible situation where a bunch of Los Angeles cops were videotaped beating a motorist. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. And the sad thing is, a lot of that situation, that was in the 90s, hasn't changed a whole lot. But getting back to the point, the time frame of the book was very specific. So because I kept a fairly accurate journal, I knew which cases and which clients that I had during that time frame. So I was able to use that as my cast of characters. And again, this is naivete. When I finished the book, it was way too long. And I showed it to several agents. Shopping the book around for agents is another story, but most of them ignore you. A couple of them might send you back a form letter. And then a couple actually took the time to write back saying, hey, your book is really interesting, but man, this is way too long. You need to cut this thing down by half. Oh. So then I had to go back with the red pen, and I just went, and that was the tough part, was trying to decide what to take out. So I was able to narrow it down to ended up being 123,000 words. And I was told to get it down to 110, and I just couldn't. And the publisher decided, you know what? It reads so well. He goes, we'll keep it at 123,000. So, but that's basically how I picked the stories. Was they're real stories that happened during that time frame.
Yeah. Yes, I can only imagine having to, after you put all that work in it, and then somehow decide which stories to leave in to make sure you're getting your message across. So. Well, I'm excited to finish it. Like I said, I just got it yesterday, so I'm not that far through, but I'm already enjoying it and so excited to finish it. Can people get it anywhere? Where can we send people to go get a copy?
It's available online. All the online booksellers like Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Books R Us. You can get it at Walmart. You can get it at Target. There's quite a few places that carry it. And if you don't want to shop around, go to my website, which is dougmader.com. And there's a link on my website that'll take you to a whole series of online booksellers that you can order it from them.
Perfect. I'll make sure to put some of those links in our description so people can quickly go and get that.
Thank you.
And so before we go to our final 4 questions, I again want to thank you so much for spending some time with me and sharing a little bit about your exciting career adventure. There's so much that we have not even touched. So maybe I can convince you to come back on one day.
Oh, I'd be honored to. Absolutely. You bet.
Love it. All right. So your final 4 questions are, what is something that people might get wrong about you?
People think I'm really serious, but I'm not. I'm a funny guy. See?
It might be the picture of you hugging an alligator. Try a bunny next time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are afraid of me because they think I'm really serious, but I'm not. I'm really a funny guy, and I love people, and I love being around people, and I love having a good time. So I hear that a lot. People are afraid to talk to me because they think, oh, he's just scary. And I go, I'm not scary. I don't think I'm scary.
No, you're not.
So,
what is something that is still on your bucket list?
going to Australia. I've been to every other continent, including Antarctica. So I definitely need to get to Australia. That's on my bucket list. There's quite a few things. I like to climb mountains, and then all my injuries have caught up with me. And so I am 6 months out of having my entire spine reconstructed. So my next bucket list is Mount Whitney in California, because that'll be a good stepping stone to get back into mountain climbing. And I don't know. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I've gotten a chance to do a lot of stuff. I definitely want to get down under. Yeah, that's on my list.
It is a really cool country, so I hope you get the chance. Absolutely.
Thank you.
What is a hidden skill or interest you have? Something people may not know.
Oh, gosh. When I was in veterinary school, up till veterinary school, I used to play in a rock and roll band. So I'm a musician. I can't sing for squat, but I used to play the guitar all the time. When I was a resident, we had a resident band, and we used to play. And we actually got to open for a group called the Stray Cats. And at the time, they were a pretty big name band. So we got to be the opening act for them. So that was pretty fun. That was the early days when I would be on stage with the beard and the long hair and the earring and the guitar, and something that I left a long time ago.
I think that's kind of ironic that a group of veterinary residents are opening for a band called the Stray Cats.
I know. It worked out perfectly.
Love that. And finally, what is something you're most grateful for?
People, friendships. And I'm just grateful for all the people, all the friends that I've made in my career that have always been there to pick me up when I fall down, and believe in me and support me. And, a lot of these people I can never personally repay. So the best way to do that is by paying it forward and trying to keep that positive attitude and positive energy flowing.
Yes. Thank you to our spare tires out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I loved talking with Dr. Mader. Don't forget, you can find us at VMX 2023. I hope to see you there. Until next time. If you like this podcast, give it a great 5-star rating and review. If you like watching on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe and continue to follow us on this journey. Until next time, take care.